You know, sometimes you have to wonder if anyone could please Jesus. You know, Jesus didn't give many attaboys or attagirls, did he? He didn't often say thank you. He didn't often tell people that they had done well. And he didn't seem particularly concerned that he might bruise someone's self-esteem. Sometimes Jesus seemed downright rude. And that happens in our gospel lesson today. Jesus came to the home of his dear friends, Mary and Martha. And you know, he's visited their home before, perhaps many times before. You know, and on one occasion, he raised their brother Lazarus. He raised him from the dead. We all remember that. And shortly thereafter, Mary anointed Jesus' feet with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. And in today's gospel lesson, Jesus is making his last visit to the home of Mary and Martha. Now, Luke's been telling us that Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem, where he's going to die. And Mary and Martha, they live in Bethany, which is near Jerusalem. So with Jerusalem just around the corner, Jesus doesn't have long to live. And he knows it. And he's been telling the disciples that he's going to die, but they just don't seem to understand, do they? Luke says that they were afraid to ask him anything about this thing. Now, on this occasion, Martha welcomed Jesus into her home. You know, it's odd that Luke doesn't mention Lazarus, Martha's brother, because property typically resided in the man's name, didn't it? Wasn't this Lazarus' home then? But Luke tells us that Martha welcomed Jesus into her home. And then Luke tells us that Martha had a sister, Mary. Presumably it was Mary's home too, but Martha was clearly in charge. Martha was distracted by many tasks, wasn't she? You know, we all know how that feels, don't we? It feels overwhelming sometimes. You know, company's coming. Got to sweep the floor. Got windows to wash and guest towels to hang up. We got to cook the food, don't we? And you know, you can do some of those things ahead of time, but you can't cook the food until the last minute. You can't cook it ahead of time. You can't serve the guests ahead of time. And once Jesus arrived, Martha was busy, busy, busy. And then Martha, she looked over her shoulder, and what did she see? She saw her sister Mary sitting on the floor listening to Jesus. Martha, she hadn't let her discuss. No, she said, Jesus, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left all the work for me to do? And you know, suddenly it was Jesus' fault that Martha was busy and distracted, wasn't it? She threw it over on him. Lord, don't you care? Lord, can't you see? Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Come on to help me. That's what she's doing. But Jesus said at this point that he seemed so much rude by what he said. He said, Martha, Martha. Can you hear the exasperation there? Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. You know, if I would have been Martha right then and there, that would have been it. I would have turned off the stove, shut down the kitchen, and walked right in and sat down and listened to Jesus. I'd look at him and say, where do you want me to sit, Jesus? You know, I was worried. Not worried anymore. I was distracted, right? Not anymore. But I promise one thing, Jesus, that I'm not worried or distracted right now. I'm sitting right here and I'm listening to you. I'm perfectly relaxed. Look at me. And of course, I'd be sitting there waiting to hear the sounds of stomachs grumbling, you know? Are you folks hungry? Well, I'm sorry, the kitchen's closed. I don't think there's a thing to eat in this house. And I'd gloat. Not on the outside where people could see it. I mean, but inside, I'd be all smug and gloaty and everything. Serves you right. Next time, Jesus, keep your sharp tongue in its holster. little hunger is going to teach them. You know, the irony, of course, here is that Jesus had dealt with a food shortage just not many days earlier, had he? Jesus had told the disciples to feed a crowd of 5,000 people, and the disciples had said, "What do you mean, give them something to eat? There's thousands of people here, Jesus, and do you know how much food we have? We have 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's it." But Jesus had taken those 5 loaves and 2 fish, and what did he do? He fed the whole crowd. There was even food left over afterwards, wasn't there? 12 baskets of food. So you see, if Martha had decided to sit and listen, nobody really would have gone hungry, would they? Jesus would have provided. And you know, it's also worth noting that just prior to the story of Mary and Martha, this is what we talked about last week, we had the parable of the Good Samaritan. And you know, in that story, the hero was a person just like Martha. Think about it. He was a doer. He was a person who got in there and got the job done. Who expressed his caring in tangible actions. He was a busy man. A man who got his hands dirty in service to others. And Jesus made this busy man the hero of that parable. Jesus wasn't against active and busy and serving people, was he? So why did Jesus encourage Martha in her service, in her busyness? So why didn't Jesus encourage her? She too was taking care of people, right? Why not make Martha the hero of this story? Now, note that the Good Samaritan had provided what the wounded victim needed. He bandaged the victim's wounds and took him to the nearest town and provided money for his care. The wounded man didn't need someone to sit and listen. He needed medical attention. And the Samaritan provided that. Jesus' situation was different. His time was growing short. He was headed for the cross. And soon, he would enter Jerusalem where he would die. He had come for a last visit with Mary and Martha, old and beloved friends. He didn't need a fancy last meal, did he? He needed time with his friends. Furthermore, Mary and Martha needed time with Jesus. Because you know, in the future, they're going to look back on this last visit as one of the truly special moments of their lives. Jesus, a man whom everyone wanted to see, had come to their home. He had honored them with his presence. And he had only a little time remaining in his short life, and he had chosen to spend it with them. That's a special moment. You know, what a tragedy if Martha were to miss it by working in the kitchen the whole time. And you know, we, like Martha, we're busy. We're worried. And we're distracted by so many things. We're trying to balance claims on our lives and our family and our friends. Church and work. We can't do it all, can we? But we try, don't we? Like Martha, we grow resentful because other people are not pulling their share of the load. We're critical of our husbands or our wives if they don't help around the house, or they're nagging us about money all the time. We're critical of our coworkers who don't share our dedication to the job. And we're critical of our children if they don't keep their rooms clean. Is this a happy way to live? Of course not. Is there a way out? There is. We need to spend a little time at Jesus' feet, don't we? We need to spend a little time reading the scriptures, a little time in prayer, a little time getting centered, a little time away from our everyday business, a little time letting the Lord have his way in our lives, a little time letting the Lord set the direction for our day, a little time at Jesus' feet. This is why Jesus said to Mary that Mary had chosen what is better. If we will choose the better part, Jesus will fill us with his presence. He will help us to sort out the tangles, and he will help us do the important things and to accept the fact that we can't do everything. He will help us to avoid becoming resentful becoming a nagging person. A little time with Jesus is to we human beings what oil is to an automobile. With it, everything runs more smoothly. So here's two questions for you. First question, can we afford to spend a little time with Jesus each day? The answer, of course, is no. We can't afford the time. We're too busy, aren't we? There are so many claims on our lives. It sounds like a good day and a good idea, but it just isn't practical for our busy lives. And the second question is, can we afford not to spend a little time with Jesus each day? Can we afford to continue in our worry and our distraction? Can we afford to spend our days going this way and that with no guiding light to set our direction? Can we afford to go through life with our deepest needs unmet and with that hollow place at the center of our lives? Can we afford to be like Martha, too busy, too worried, too distracted to find much pleasure in our lives? So try an experiment this week. Set your alarm to go off 15 minutes early. Get up, turn on the coffee pot, and sit down with your Bible for a few minutes. Read one story from the Gospels. Just one story, that's all it takes in the morning. Then spend a couple minutes reflecting on that story. Spend a few minutes in prayer. Ask Jesus to help you that day. And ask Jesus to help you get your heart in the right place. Pray for your significant other, or your husband, or your wife. Pray for your children. Pray for your neighbors. Pray for your enemies. And then say, amen. And then go about your day. 15 minutes at Jesus' feet will change your day. 15 minutes at Jesus' feet will change your life. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.